$100 billion. That constitutes the staggering cost estimate for what could become the largest defense contract in Canadian history. And South Korea desires it intensely, so intensely that in late January 2026, Seoul dispatched its highest-ranking bureaucrat, the presidential chief of staff, alongside industry giants from Hyundai and Hanwha to Ottawa on what officials designated sales diplomacy of the highest order. However, here is where this narrative becomes genuinely extraordinary. Canada examined this massive defense agreement and essentially stated, "We desire more." Not exclusively submarines, not exclusively the weapons platforms. Ottawa is demanding that South Korea fundamentally reshape its economic relationship with Canada. Construct automobile factories for us, commit in our steel industry, generate hundreds of thousands of employments, transform this defense contract into an economic transformation. Welcome to the strangest bidding competition in modern military history, where submarines have become negotiating instruments for automobile plants, where defense procurement has morphed into industrial policy, and where Canada is operating two global powers against each other with remarkable audacity. Let us commence with why Canada requires submarines so urgently. The Royal Canadian Navy currently operates 4 Victoria-class submarines. These vessels were purchased second-hand from Britain in 1998. They were already aged, then having been constructed in the 1980s. Today, exclusively one of those 4 submarines is genuinely operational. The other 3 sit in various states of maintenance or repair. Prime Minister Mark Carney has repeatedly emphasized this embarrassing reality. Canada possesses the international community's longest coastline, spanning 3 oceans, the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Arctic. Yet, the nation cannot adequately patrol any of them. Vice Admiral Angus Topshee, commander of the Royal Canadian Navy, has stated directly that Canada is currently incapable to satisfy its military obligations. The Victoria-class fleet must be retired by the mid-2030s. Ottawa established a deadline of receiving its initial fresh submarine by 2035. Miss that window and Canada encounters a capability gap, years where the nation would possess no operational submarine force whatsoever. For a nation with sovereignty concerns in the rapidly warming Arctic, this represents an existential strategic vulnerability. In July 2024, then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau declared the Canadian Patrol submarine project at the NATO summit in Washington. The strategy called for acquiring up to 12 conventionally powered, under-ice-capable submarines. By August 2025, Ottawa had narrowed the field to 2 finalists, Germany's Hyundai Marine Systems and South Korea's Hanwha Ocean. The submarines themselves represent fundamentally different philosophies. Germany offers the Type 212CD, a compact, extraordinarily quiet design optimized for stealth and Arctic operations. At roughly 2,500 tons, it features hydrogen, fuel cell air-independent propulsion, enabling weeks of submerged endurance. Its diamond-shaped hull deflects active sonar, rendering it nearly invisible to hostile detection systems. South Korea's KSS-3 Batch 2 is a substantial platform by comparison. At 3,600 tons surfaced and 4,000 tons submerged, it dwarfs the German offering. The Korean submarine features something remarkable for a conventional platform, a 10-cell vertical launch system capable of firing cruise missiles. This provides its strategic strike capability that few diesel-electric submarines possess. Lithium-ion batteries provide extended submerged endurance for blue water operations distant from home. Both submarines satisfy Canadian requirements. However, their differences reflect divergent strategic visions. The German vessel excels at disappearing beneath Arctic ice and quietly gathering intelligence. The Korean vessel can project strength across the Pacific or Atlantic while still executing Arctic patrols. What renders this competition unusual is not the submarines themselves. It is what Canada is demanding alongside them. In early January 2026, reports emerged that Ottawa had issued an extraordinary condition to both bidding nations. Canada desires automobile manufacturing commitments as component of the submarine agreement. Specifically, Ottawa requested South Korea to arrange a commitment for Hyundai to establish production facilities in Canada. Germany received similar requests concerning expanded Volkswagen operations. South Korea's presidential chief of staff, Jong-hook, confirmed these demands publicly in an interview on a Korean platform. He stated that Canadian Industry Minister Melanie Joly directly sought Hyundai's investment to offset the submarine purchase. Jung did not minimize the situation. He characterized Canada as essentially informing Seoul, "We are purchasing weapons, and this is what we require." Germany states Volkswagen is willing to execute more. Canada is operating the two bidders against each other with remarkable transparency. To comprehend why Ottawa is establishing such demands, you require comprehending what Trump's tariffs have executed to the Canadian economy. The 25% tariffs on Canadian merchandise devastated the integrated North American automotive industry. Plants have terminated, employments have vanished. Entire communities constructed around automotive manufacturing encounter existential uncertainty. Automotive industry employments in Canada have deteriorated by roughly 30% in recent years. Of the 9 assembly plants operated by the big 3 American automakers in 2000, 4 have terminated entirely. 3 sit idle awaiting products, exclusively 2 currently assembled vehicles. The traditional foundation of Canadian manufacturing has been diminished. Canada has committed to expending 5% of its gross domestic product on defense by 2035 as component of its NATO obligations. Prime Minister Carney has stated this would cost approximately $150 billion annually. That represents a massive increase from current expenditure levels. Ottawa observes this expenditure surge not exclusively as a defense requirement, however, as an opportunity for economic transformation. Defense Minister David McGuinty has stated explicitly that every defense investment must generate authentic industrial and economic advantages domestically. Stephen Furr, Secretary of State for Defense Procurement, has stated Canada will select the bid that generates the most Canadian employments. The submarine contract is not purely about obtaining the superior military platform. It is about leveraging defense expenditure to rebuild Canadian industry. South Korea responded to these demands with what can exclusively be characterized as a comprehensive initiative. On January 26, 2026, a high-level delegation arrived in Canada, led by Presidential Chief of Staff Jong-hook. The delegation encompassed Industry Minister Kim Bo-myo and senior executives from Hanwha Ocean, HD Hyundai Heavy Industries, and critically Hyundai Motor Group. Hyundai Motor Group Executive Chair Chung Yui-sen personally joined the delegation. His presence signaled that Seoul accepts the automobile manufacturing demand seriously, even if Hyundai has publicly stated it possesses no current strategies to construct a factory in Canada. The Korean delegation embarked on what officials designated a persuasion offensive in Toronto. They hosted a Canada-Korea Automotive Forum where Canadian automotive executives established direct presentations to Hyundai about relocating manufacturing north. Flavio Vulpe, president of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association informed the Koreans the business case exists to construct electric vehicles in Canada. Hanwha Ocean declared a series of partnership agreements with Canadian corporations. The most significant involved Aloma Steel in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. Hanwha committed $345 million in investments encompassing $275 million for a fresh structural steel beam mill. The corporation pledged to purchase Alma Steel for submarine construction and maintenance facilities. This was strategically brilliant. Alma Steel has been impacted by American tariffs. Layoffs loomed. By targeting this specific corporation, Hanwha demonstrated it comprehended Canadian political priorities. The communication to Ottawa was transparent. Select us, and we will revive your struggling industrial communities. Hanwha signed additional memorandums with Telesat for satellite connectivity, MDA Space for space technology, AI startup Coher, and defense optics firm PV Labs. The corporation declared strategies to access an Ottawa office in February 2026. Its fresh Canadian CEO, Glenn Copeland, is a former Royal Canadian Navy officer who communicates the terminology of Canadian defense priorities. Consulting firm KPMG estimated that Hanwha's industrial cooperation framework could generate more than 200,000 person-years of employment in Canada between 2026 and 2040. Whether that number proves realistic remains to be observed. However, it represents precisely the variety of transformative economic impact Ottawa desires to hear about. Germany is not surrendering this contract without resistance. Thyssen Marine Systems CEO Oliver Burkhardt declared that Germany is assembling its own multi-billion-dollar investment package. The discussions extend beyond submarines to encompass rare earths mining, artificial intelligence, and battery production for the automotive sector. Germany's presentation involves something even more ambitious than industrial investment. Officials have discussed the possibility of a 40 to 50-year partnership in which German, Norwegian, and Canadian navies would co-design, construct, maintain, and even jointly crew submarines. This would embed Canada into a European defense ecosystem, potentially decreasing dependence on American military cooperation. TKMS signed an agreement with Vancouver's Seaspan shipyard to establish submarine maintenance facilities on Canada's west coast. The German corporation has publicly discussed constructing some submarines in Canada, though Ottawa has expressed skepticism given the nation's absence of existing industrial capacity. The German offer carries particular significance given broader geopolitical dynamics. Germany is intensifying defense cooperation with allies amid rising tensions with Russia and uncertainty about American security guarantees under Trump. Berlin observes the Canadian submarine contract as component of a larger effort to strengthen non-American defense partnerships within NATO. The coordination of this competition intersects with dramatic transitions in Canadian foreign policy. On January 16, 2026, Prime Minister Carney declared a preliminary commerce agreement with China. During a visit to Beijing, Canada agreed to permit up to 49,000 Chinese electric vehicles annually at decreased tariff rates. China decreased tariffs on Canadian canola and additional agricultural products in exchange. This represented a major departure from Canadian alignment with American commerce policy. Trump responded with fury, warning 100% tariffs on all Canadian merchandise if Ottawa proceeded with the China agreement. The American president accused China of acquiring Canada. Carney's willingness to defy Trump on commerce demonstrates a broader strategic reorientation. Canada is actively diversifying its economic and security relationships. The submarine contract accommodates this pattern. Neither finalist is American. Ottawa is explicitly seeking defense partnerships outside its traditional dependence on Washington. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, days after the China agreement, Carney delivered an address widely interpreted as a criticism of Trump's policies. He characterized the current moment as a rupture, not a transition, and urged middle powers to unite together against great power coercion. Trump responded by revoking Canada's invitation to his Board of Peace initiative and designating Carney governor rather than prime minister. The submarine determination will signal which direction Canada inclines in this fresh geopolitical environment. Selecting Germany deepens connections to European defense structures and NATO's traditional core. Selecting South Korea aligns Canada with the dynamic Indo-Pacific defense sector and signals accessibility to partnerships beyond the Atlantic Alliance. South Korea's defense industry has become one of the international community's fastest expanding arms exporters. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, South Korea ranked as the international community's 10th largest arms exporter from 2020 to 2024. Korean defense corporations reported operating profits exceeding $3 trillion in 2024, nearly double the previous year. This expansion stems from several factors. Korean weapons are cost competitive. Delivery timelines surpass European competitors. Quality satisfies international standards. When European nations required to rapidly replace equipment transmitted to Ukraine, Korean manufacturers could genuinely deliver. Hanwha's K9 self-propelled howitzer has become one of the most popular artillery systems globally. Hyundai RHDM's K2 Black Panther tank has attracted massive orders from Poland and Romania. Korea Aerospace Industries exports Fa-50 light fighters. The nation has tied France for second position in weapons exports to NATO member nations. President Yoon Suk-yeol has pledged to construct the international community's fourth largest defense industry. Winning the Canadian contract would represent a massive advance toward that objective. It would be Korea's largest defense agreement in Western markets and could serve as a foundation for broader expansion into NATO defense procurement. For Canada, the competition raises profound questions about national strategy. The Korean submarine offers faster delivery. Hanwha claims it could launch the initial vessel by 2032 and deliver 4 by 2035. The Victoria class will be decommissioned around that period. Speed matters enormously. The German submarine offers deeper NATO integration and a proven Arctic pedigree. The Type 212 family has operated in European waters for years. Germany and Norway are already constructing the 212CD. Canada could potentially integrate into an existing production schedule rather than commencing fresh. Subsequently, there are the industrial offset questions. Can Hyundai genuinely be persuaded to construct automobiles in Canada when American tariffs render cross-border commerce perilous? Would a Hyundai plant in Canada encounter the identical tariff obstacles that have devastated existing Canadian automotive manufacturing? Hyundai has committed heavily in American production, encompassing an $8 billion megaplant in Georgia. Constructing additional capacity in Canada could complicate the corporation's relationship with Washington, precisely when Trump is warning punitive action against Korean automobiles. The Canadian government appears willing to accept uncertainty. Ottawa signed a memorandum of understanding with South Korea on automotive sector cooperation during the January delegation visit. The agreement communicates to strengthening supply chains, enhancing cooperation on critical minerals, and exploring manufacturing possibilities. It commits to nothing concrete while maintaining options accessible. Germany possesses its own automotive influence. Volkswagen committed to constructing an electric vehicle battery factory in St. Thomas, Ontario, through its PowerCo subsidiary. Ottawa has requested Berlin to expand this commitment as component of the submarine bid. Germany offers a different industrial advantage package, however, one that may prove more realistic given existing investments. The determination deadline approaches. Both corporations must submit complete proposals by March 2026. Vice Admiral Topsy has expressed hope for a determination by year conclusion. Some analysts accept Ottawa could award the contract by late 2026, though Canadian defense procurement historically relocates slowly. The submarines themselves will consume years to construct and deliver. However, the determination about which partnership to pursue will shape Canadian defense and industrial policy for half a century. The maintenance, upgrades, and eventual replacement of these vessels will bind Canada to its selected partner through the 2017s and beyond. Canada is establishing this election at a moment of extraordinary geopolitical flux. The American security guarantee that protected Canadian sovereignty for decades presently appears conditional on political alignment with Washington. European defense cooperation offers an alternative, however, requires investment and commitment. Asian partnerships access fresh possibilities, however, absence the institutional depth of Atlantic relationships. The Arctic adds urgency to these calculations. Climate transformation is accessing the Northwest Passage to increasing maritime traffic. Russia and China have expanded their polar presence. The Arctic is warming at 4 times the global average, transforming what was once a frozen obstacle into a contested maritime zone. Canada's current submarines cannot operate under ice. They can patrol the boundary of the ice cap during accessible seasons, however, cannot penetrate deep into Arctic waters. Both proposed replacements offer improved cold water capabilities, though neither is nuclear-powered and thus completely ice-capable year-round. Submarines provide capabilities that surface vessels and aircraft cannot duplicate. They can operate covertly beneath the surface, gathering intelligence and monitoring adversary activities without detection. They can deter hostile action by their mere possible presence. An adversary can never be certain a Canadian submarine is not observing. This matters enormously in the Arctic context. Russian submarines transit near Canadian waters. Chinese research vessels probe northern passages. Cable-laying vessels map the seabed. Without credible underwater surveillance, Canada cannot comprehend what occurs in its own territorial waters. The $100 billion question is not genuinely about submarines at all. It is about what variety of nation Canada desires to become. A nation that accepts strategic vulnerability for the sake of economic savings. Associate in European defense structures constructing bridges across the Atlantic, an emerging participant in Indo-Pacific security architecture, a nation that leverages defense expenditure to rebuild its industrial foundation. The Korean and German bids represent different responses to these questions. South Korea offers speed, strike capability, and integration with the international community's most dynamic defense manufacturing sector. Germany offers stealth, NATO compatibility, and partnership with traditional allies, working to strengthen European security. Canada's demands for automobile manufacturing alongside submarines expose a government attempting to maximize value from every dollar expended. Whether that methodology proves brilliant negotiating or unrealistic overreach remains to be observed. What is certain is that this determination will echo for decades. The 12 submarines Canada selects will patrol its waters into the 2080s. The industrial partnerships formed around this contract will shape Canadian manufacturing for a generation. The strategic relationships constructed or bypassed will influence Canada's position in whatever international order emerges from current upheavals. $100 billion purchases substantial submarine capability. It additionally purchases 50 years of strategic alignment. South Korea and Germany both comprehend what is genuinely at stake. The question is whether Canada completely grasps the magnitude of the selection it encounters. The broader context renders this even more consequential. Canada has committed to reaching 5% of GDP on defense expenditure by 2035 under its fresh NATO pledge. Prime Minister Carney has stated this amounts to approximately $150 billion annually. That is a staggering sum that would triple current defense budgets. This currency will flow somewhere. The submarine contract is the singular largest component of that expenditure surge. Whoever wins gains not exclusively one contract, however, a privileged position for decades of Canadian defense procurement. The maintenance contracts alone could be worth tens of billions over the submarine service lives. Both bidders comprehend this. TKMS has proposed constructing maintenance facilities on both Canadian coasts. Hanwha has signed agreements with over 20 Canadian corporations for various aspects of its bid. Each is attempting to embed itself so deeply in Canadian defense infrastructure that switching costs would become prohibitive. The December 2024 audit by Canada's Auditor General found that Ottawa could not demonstrate that previous defense contracts, where $36 billion had genuinely delivered promised economic advantages. The tracking was inadequate, regulations were unclear, obligations went unverified or missed entirely. This history renders the current promises of automobile plants and steel mills worth examining skeptically. Yet the political incentives indicate toward maximizing industrial advantages. Canadian voters in struggling manufacturing communities desire employments. Politicians require to demonstrate that defense expenditure advantages more than exclusively foreign contractors. The pressure to extract maximum value from this contract is immense. Vice Admiral Topshee has cautioned against excessive customization that could delay deliveries. He desires submarines off-the-shelf delivered rapidly operated soon. Every modification adds years to timelines. Canada's history of defense procurement disasters, from the Sea King helicopter replacement to the fighter jet competition, suggests that complexity and Canadian procurement do not combine favorably. The Korean bid offers speed. Hanwha claims it can deliver initial vessels by 2032. Its expanded shipyard facilities becoming operational in 2029 will permit production of 5 submarines and 3 surface vessels simultaneously. The corporation has promised in-country training for Canadian submariners in South Korea, so crews are prepared when vessels arrive. The German bid offers integration. Norway and Germany are already operating and constructing Type 212 variants. Joining their program signifies access to an existing logistics chain, shared spare components, coordinated upgrades, and